So there isn't anyone, no one inside of BSG that is going to tell us whether or not any of the dev team is still around. They're not going to tell us whether or not the dev team is still on track. They're not going to tell us whether or not people ended up leaving because they're worried about whatever with the war. No one at BSG is going to tell us anything. Historically, for the last couple of wipe cycles, BSG has always done or had been doing some type of events, usually circulated around the weekend, giving us additional content to do outside of the normal grind of tasks to try and keep things even relatively, somewhat, a little bit more fresh than just doing the same old tasks. Now, if you're somebody that's watching me and you're relatively new to the game and maybe this is your first or even second wipe, you might be in a position where the quests don't feel like they're that old yet. But for the OGs, the guys that have been playing for 6, 7, 8 wipe cycles now, we know, have seen the same old tasks time and time again. The addition of dailies helped a little bit, and then obviously they started adding more tasks to the pile as time went on. A lot of them becoming a lot more of a stretch goal than something that ended up being, I guess, the core focus. Now myself, I've got probably almost 10,000 hours in this game between 3 separate accounts for hardcore playthroughs and an account for my son to play with me on, and accounts that my main account that I've been playing forever. And still I haven't gotten a Kappa container, so I tend to find my fun elsewhere than just doing quests. But that being said, there is a lack of content. And recently, with the most recent patches, over the last couple of months, we haven't seen BSG doing any events. There hasn't been any Twitch rivals. There hasn't been any drop streams. It looks as though, because of the economic situation in Russia and how the Western world has kind of cut off the banks, so to speak, it looks like BSG is kind of more into a mode of attempting to hold on to its money than it is in trying to spend marketing dollars. Be that as it may, there's still a lack of content and a lack of events that have been going on recently. Seems like a lot of people are being burned out. The larger streamers have obviously moved on, myself included. Not that I consider myself a larger streamer, but there are a lot of people that are playing other games. Myself, for instance, for the last 3 or 4 days, I have been no-lifing it on this game called Dark and Darker that I made a video about not too long ago, which just ended a playtest weekend. Next weekend is coming up on the 28th of October. I would highly recommend you guys check that game out. Add it to your wish list on Steam or whatever. Play the playtest weekends. They're really, really fun. For those of you that have been following my content for a while, you know that I have been somewhat critical of BSG in the past, sometimes very critical of BSG in the past. But you also know, having watched my stuff, that I am also the voice of tolerance, depending on the time and, I don't know, basically how my brain works and what I think or whatever. And I realize that I'm just another guy on the internet. But Battlestate Games is based in St. Petersburg, Russia. For those of you wondering, they are not based out of London. They do tax filings. They do tax filings through London, England, but they are not headquartered in England. All of the devs, everyone where the money flows to, is through banks that were in England to Russia. So there isn't really anyone in England working on the game. They're all in St. Petersburg. Russia, in case you've been living under a rock, has been attempting to invade and overtake Ukraine and annex it as part of Russia. Ukraine doesn't want that, so they have been fighting back, and they have been doing a pretty damn good job. Russia, from what I have seen, has not acted in a way that has been organized, and they are attempting to further escalate this conflict with Ukraine in a way that looks like they will be trying to rope in people on the world scale, which is pretty scary. At the same time, they have enacted their version of a draft for their military. And there are all kinds of different rules depending on who you ask. But the reality of the situation is the citizenry of Russia has not received this well. People in Russia are being conscripted into the military against their will. And there are an awful lot of people that are attempting to flee the country before they are drafted into the military, because the young men that are living in Russia do not want to fight. At least a large contingent of them do not want to fight in this war. Now, obviously, the propaganda machine on both sides is going to be whatever it is. Personally, I don't believe that what Russia is doing to Ukraine is justifiable in any way, shape, or form. I think that Putin is being overreaching, overzealous, and the whole thing about Nazis is bullshit. But none of that matters, because we're trying to talk about BSG. This is just for background. There are an awful lot of young guys working as programmers for Battlestate Games. What I have been told is that because they are educated people, they went to university, they didn't have mandatory military service, the vast majority of them, so they would not necessarily be people that would be drafted right away. That doesn't mean that they wouldn't be, and that also doesn't mean that my information is correct either. However, given the economic climate of Russia and how they're attempting to get money in, if they even can, that would explain the lack of events, I guess, in one sense. It also calls into question timeline stuff. Whether or not BSG will be able to release Streets on the timeline that it had been planning, whether or not it'll be 1.0 by the end of the calendar year, whether or not they'd be able to even do any events depending on whether or not they have enough staff, whether or not there's half of the devs that are left in the studio because a bunch of them might have left. All of this is one giant question mark. Because ain't nobody at BSG that's going to tell us shit. And I want to make that abundantly clear. See, because Russia doesn't treat its people the way that the United States treats its people. Technically speaking, Russia allows for freedom of speech. But we all know what happens when people speak out against the government in Russia. If they feel that the voice is widespread enough, they get disappeared. And their family ends up in jeopardy. So there isn't anyone, no one, inside of BSG that is going to tell us whether or not any of the dev team is still around. They're not going to tell us whether or not the dev team is still on track. They're not going to tell us whether or not people ended up leaving because they're worried about whatever with the war. No one at BSG is going to tell us anything. Hopefully, you're able to give BSG a little bit of tolerance. We all would love to see a video game fixed and working fantastically well with great netcode and great gunplay, and we all want to see Streets and we all want to run around and have a great time. It's a video game. It's a video game that we enjoy. And the people that are working at BSG, they're people. They're people that are trying to earn a living. They're trying to remain gainfully employed. They're trying to provide for themselves and their own family. They want to live happy and healthy. And I want that for them too. And anyone watching this should also want that for them. Because the reason why we're here is because we really like playing this video game. But if the devs aren't safe, so while I get that there's a lack of content, and we can all make jokes about it, and we say that BSG is making a dead game, and blah, 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 blah. If you are watching this video, and you're like, I don't care, I just want my video game, you fucking sociopath. If you were living in that situation, you would be scared out of your mind. I would be. I would be nothing but worried. I would be a ball of stress. Be a little tolerant of the situation. If we don't get Streets by the end of the year, so fucking what? You know, just try and enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it, play something else, come back to it later. You know, I don't know, man. I get that. I'm a boomer. I get that I'm older, but it's like, it's a game. It's a video game. It's a fucking video game. And these are people's lives. You know what I'm saying? And if anybody at BSG is watching this, I know that we have had our differences in the past. I just want you guys to stay safe, and I want your families to stay safe. I hope you guys can try to find some joy in your day. We're all rooting for you, boys. And we'll see you in the next one, okay? All right. Peace.